different due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are holding our meeting at the Chaska Event Center. Because of the City Council has declared a local emergency for the COVID pandemic, state statutes allows us to hold meetings with Zoom capabilities. If you have joined the meeting via Zoom, you will notice that you are muted. We have a moderator on a call who will unmute those who wish to speak during public comment portions of the meeting. Public comments will be reserved for visitor presentation, public hearings, and special circumstances determined by the council. Once we reach those parts of the agenda, I will ask if there are any public comments. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by computer or tablet, please click on the participants on the bottom of your screen and then select raise your hand icon. If you wish to speak and have joined the meeting by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. Once your hand is raised, the moderator will announce your name or phone number and unmute your line. Please remember that public comment is provided at the discretion of the council, as meant to provide productive discourse on topics related to the city of Chaska. Speakers shall refrain from comment or behavior that is deemed disorderly, derogatory, obscene, indecent, or off topic. Any person engaging in such speech or action may be muted or removed from the meeting. I also do want to comment that we will be taking our mask off when we speak here. And because we are social distance, we can leave our mask on, but I know many council members will, and probably myself will continue to wear a mask. So that's the reason that you're seeing me now not wearing a mask, but when anyone is speaking, they are more than welcome to take their mask off. It's you can hear us fine at home. It's more of within the building here that we can hear because the room is quite large. So I just want to be clear about that as we move forward. All right, now getting back to the agenda here. Nate, will you call roll, please?
Yes, Councilmember Hatfield.
Here.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Here.
Councilmember Wong. Here. Councilmember Graw.
Here.
And Mayor Winchell.
Here. Next, we'll move to item 4, which is adopting the agenda. Are there corrections or additions to the agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hatfield.
Second by Hubbard.
Second by Councilmember Hubbard to approve the agenda. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, next we move into visitor presentation. I have 3 folks on the line with us tonight that are going to be with us. 2 are in person and 1 is via Zoom. The first one I have is our police chief, Chief Seibert, is going to give us an update on recruitment efforts.
Yes, Chief Seibert comes up. One of the things that I wanted to do just to introduce this topic is I know a couple meetings ago, the question had come up about what type of efforts are we taking to really look at how we recruit our police officers, how we really try to attempt to make sure that they're reflecting our community, and what are different strategies that we look at as we go into the future. So this has been a topic that Chief Seibert and myself and Nate have talked quite a bit about. And while we don't have all the answers now, Chief Seibert's here to talk about some of the things that we're working with now. So turn over to Chief.
Thanks, Matt.
Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk with you tonight on this topic of recruitment, which Matt kind of teed up a little bit, which I think is very relevant, very important for us to discuss. So in terms of my presentation, I'll keep it brief. Obviously, if you have any questions, I can address those as well. So what I wanted to outline, as you can see on the first slide, is just to cover some high-level themes that are occurring across the country as it relates to police recruitment. And a lot of these sources are derived from the International Association of Chiefs of Police. And from a 2020 article, the A.C.T characterized recruitment in law enforcement agencies as a current crisis. And some of the staples of that, or some of the commonalities, is agencies are currently faced with an overwhelming challenge to keep pace with hiring, as that relates directly to vacancies as they arise in agencies. So Vacancies obviously are common from retirement, and then also people just leaving the profession. And it's just the number of candidates that are coming on board in an application process to replace those vacancies has been a challenge across the country, which again has been characterized by fewer applicants. And then also of those applicants, they could be described as sometimes lower quality that in years past would not have been looked at extensively in the hiring process. Here in Chaska, the past couple of hiring processes that we've seen, we've still had an adequate number of applicants, but based upon, I'd say within the past 5-10 years, about half the amount of candidates that we'll typically see. We are in the early stages of the hiring process now for a police officer position, and we have 59 candidates that will be moving on to the first round interview. One thing that I think is impactful upon our particular area here in the Metro, which I think is important to take note of, is we do see what I would characterize as a fierce competition amongst agencies of those highly desired candidates. So the best way I can describe it is we will find ourselves oftentimes in a race with other departments when we have a highly qualified candidate, somebody that we're very interested in hiring. It seems quite common that they also are in another pre-employment process with an agency somewhere in the Metro. Can you hit the next slide, Nate? Thank you. Again, talking a little bit more about nationwide statistics and how this might relate to Chaska, is a number of agencies were polled as part of this IACP article, and 78% of respondents to the poll identified an overall difficulty in recruiting qualified candidates. So we've been fortunate in the past number of hiring processes, both in my time as chief and also before my time here, that we have always been able to find that qualified candidate. So that hasn't been an issue here yet to date. 65% have identified that too few candidates are applying. And I marked on here that that has become here as well, seeing about, like I mentioned, a 50% reduction in the overall candidate pool. Also, 75% state that recruitment is more difficult today than it has been previously. And I think we find ourselves in that same situation as well for a multitude of reasons. It's just across the board becoming an issue in law enforcement today. 50% of agencies have needed to change policies to attract candidates. This has not been a problem or an issue with our agency yet to date. But what some examples might mark this would be, are there things in a background process that traditionally an agency may look at as prohibiting somebody from being a police officer, you know, specifically past drug use, other types of patterns of behavior. Some agencies have changed those protocols. Same thing with tattoo policies and some other things that have been changed to cast a wider net, if you will. But again, we have not made any of those changes here. And then also 25% of respondents have identified that they've needed to reduce or somehow eliminate different portions of their staffing models because they've been unable to fill vacancies, which again has not been an issue here to this point. So transitioning specifically here to Chaska, and I'm going to cover some initiatives that we've already begun and also some proposals that I could categorize being at the staff level at this point. But in no particular order, one segment that's worth taking a look at is this notion of public image and outreach. And I think this is very important as it relates to recruitment. Oftentimes we think about community engagement and outreach in the more traditional sense, but I also think it can pay dividends when it comes to recruitment. I'll explain why. I think in terms of community engagement, I think our police department has a very robust presence in many different ways. So that will continue, and we'll look at some means potentially of expanding that once we get through COVID and can reconsider some of those forms of engagement. Another, I think, prime example is a Citizens Academy, and that's something that we as a police department have participated in historically. But I also think there are maybe some ways that we can rethink what that Citizens Academy might look like as a means to foster some more interest in recruitment with our department. Another area that I've identified, which we have not yet started, would be to identify the different law enforcement educational programs across the metro and see if there's a way that we can develop a partnership or a dialogue with the lead instructors at those courses. So if there's a way that we could assemble basically what I'm categorizing as a recruitment committee within the police department. So it wouldn't be just me, it'd be a kind of a cross section of the police department. And could we go and talk to individual law enforcement classes? Could we talk at a job fair? Is there a way that we could market the Chaska Police Department? And I think the answer to that question is yes. But obviously we'll be doing some more exploration and find an efficient means to do that as part of that outreach. And then also, which is in progress now, working with the communications team here, is one thing that attracted me to my position was a recruitment brochure that not only highlighted the police chief position, but also took a look at the city and created a profile of everything that the city has to offer. And I think that the same method could be applied to police recruitment in general, where we make sure that we showcase what the city offers, what the police department offers, what the city offers, and just as a means to try to further distinguish employment here at the city and the difference that an officer can make here in the community. So that's something that will be in progress as well. So transitioning to the next step, which I'll just categorize essentially as an opportunity to gain experience. And this is one of those provisions that's still at the preliminary staff level. But looking at a way that we can open up some further opportunity to people that are interested in law enforcement would essentially be to entertain a CSO internship program. So I think it's important to note that currently we employ 3 full-time CSOs, and a large component of that job is a code enforcement role. And then also there are non-criminal functions, parking issues, things like that, animal complaints that the CSOs deal with. But these are full-time employees who may or may not have an interest in law enforcement employment as a sworn officer in the future. So potentially what we would be looking at with this program would be to tier our community service officer program. So we would maintain the full-time CSO component, which would also have that large code enforcement component, but then also look at the possibility of an internship model, which would be part-time. And as the internship connotation would apply, that it would be an internship program marked by likely a 36 to 48 month employment period as a part-time CSO, which would require that individuals as part of this program maintain enrollment in a law enforcement program. And then obviously along their educational journey, if they decided that law enforcement was not their chosen path, that also would end that internship program. But in essence, what this would allow for is a fantastic opportunity on both sides. It would allow the CSO intern to get a good acclimation to law enforcement, to get a robust understanding of the Chaska Police Department. And then also on the police department side, it would give us the opportunity to get to know somebody personally, understand their behavior, their personality, their work ethic. So when there became an opening for a sworn officer position, we essentially could use that as a recruitment ground for an internal promotion. So again, there's still some work to be done on the staff side of this. I don't have a formal recommendation in any way, shape, or form at this time, but I think it could be a valuable piece of our recruitment program as we move forward. And then also I should mention that in that CSO role, they would offer service to the city for non-criminal functions. They could assist at special events with parking complaints, animal complaints, things of that nature. And then also, I'll just briefly mention, we do have a police explorer post, which has traditionally been a very good recruitment ground as well for potential future sworn officer positions. So I think this is something that we have to recognize in the COVID environment has been very challenging to get the explorers to the table, to get into the training and the different types of opportunities that they explore there. And that's something that statewide has slowed down and stopped for a significant period of time. So We do still have some youth still in that program, but obviously we would have to expand the focus and the recruitment there as well, just to get more of those youths back into the program. And it's important to note that in both the CSO program and also the Explorer post, we do have a number of officers today in the department that were hired through those opportunities. So I think that's something we could expand upon as well. So my last slide that I wanted to cover is another portion that I've categorized as development of staff. And I'll explain why I think this is also important to the recruitment piece. So internally, I've made some changes since I started here about a year ago. And one of those is revisiting how we evaluate our officers on their performance. And then a secondary component of that is to engage in career development with the staff on a voluntary basis. So why I think this is critical is it ensures that as an agency, we're staying in tune with the needs and the desires and the professional development of our staff, and then also trying to map out how that, you know, might potentially work with any specialty positions that we have currently or any that might be created in the future. And all of this reverts back to essentially trying to develop a reputation as an agency that is progressive and pays attention to that career development of employees. And I think this is something that has been done successfully in the past, but of course, there's always things that can be improved and further development can occur. But I think whether you're talking about either a lateral hire from another agency or maybe also kids that are still in school for law enforcement, this sort of a reputation has a way of building momentum. It certainly could be beneficial to our recruitment as well. And there's other things that are tangible, maybe some that are not. But for instance, a workout on duty program, officer wellness, these are things that I believe the Chaska PD does very well, and I think sets it apart from other agencies. And I think that, you know, a lot of these factors and some other things that I haven't mentioned have combined into the situation that we have today, where we are, yes, seeing a reduced candidate pool, but we're still getting successful candidates. So I think remaining consistent, improving in these particular areas will be key as we move forward. One thing I think that is worth noting for your awareness, and I kind of chalk this up to recruitment and or retention, is to explore what some other agencies are doing across the metro and across the state. I'm not advocating that we are proposing at this point in time that we take any of these measures. But when I did discuss at the beginning that we are seeing essentially a race, if you will, sometimes for the most desired candidates, there is one thing that we've done in the past, and this is to essentially expedite our pre-employment process. This doesn't mean that we cut any corners in the background. We haven't changed any of our standards, but the pre-employment process for a police officer position can be extremely lengthy. It's everything from the first round interview, the second round interviews, and then you have that very unique background process for police officer positions, which depending upon personal factors, where a person's lived, the agency, this oftentimes can get very dragged out in duration. So we've put together a background team, which I think leads to greater efficiency and a much greater turnaround time. So with those factors in play, it benefits our agency that if we are in a race with another department, if we can background somebody sooner, we remain efficient. You know, ultimately they get that conditional job offer first, they'll likely choose our agency over another. So that is a step that we've taken, and I think it's working quite well. Other that I have seen with some agencies is offering some form of incentive to potential applicants or candidates for second language skills. Is something that I have seen when you log on to the Minnesota Post Board website, which, you know, would kind of affirm the number of agencies that are hiring now. You will see secondary language incentives, and also you will sometimes see signing bonuses and other incentives and things of that nature, which I'm not advocating that we do at this point in time, but those sort of incentives are out there currently. So essentially, like I mentioned, keep it brief. Obviously, I want to answer any questions if you have them.
One thing I'll just mention real quick before questions, discussion that Chief and I had quite a bit about was talking about this whole notion of how do we recruit for people who represent different groups within our community. And it's a tough one in the employment field because there's only so much you can there's only so much you can actually say you're seeking in a candidate and still be legal. And so it's a very difficult process to go through. But I think two of the things that really stood out to me as being real significant, this second language skill, I think is a big one. So if you have, if you have somebody that's proficient in Spanish, or if they're proficient in Somalian, or whatever cultural group that you have within that community, there's just going to be a greater likelihood that you're going to attract a candidate that is going to reflect the community. And the other one I think is the direct connection to the actual schools, and being able to go out and talk about what are the initiatives that are being worked on. Ultimately it's getting down to why would a candidate feel like they can make a difference in that community. I think both of those have a real opportunity to really help with that. And I think even getting into the CSO internship program is having those same sort of, desired skill sets coming to the table means that you're going to recruit them as a CSO and have more of a chance then to develop them within your organization. So throw that out.
I had a question or comment. So, with recruitment with schools, we have some feeder schools in the area. I can think of Mankato. I'm sure there's other ones with law enforcement programs. What is our relationship with the instructors of those programs? Because I feel like that might go hand in hand of them reflecting to you who are good candidates for hire when they come out, as well as opening the doors up for them. Because I think about my own schooling and kind of the opportunities that were held through internships and then career or, jobs and things along those lines. So
I think it needs to be improved when it comes to that relationship, because I think historically a lot of communities have taken advantage or not taken for granted the sheer number of successful applicants that submit applications to their agency. So I think we're just now getting into this situation where we need to explore that partnership and a little bit better communication or dialogue with those program coordinators or instructors. So when I mention, like job fairs or being able to come out and do some kind of a recruitment pitch to a law enforcement class, I think that's kind of consistent with what you mentioned, because to be quite frank, we just don't have that relationship right now with those instructors.
He's absolutely right. I remember, 10 years ago, you'd get 150 applicants for a job.
Yeah.
I mean, it was not an issue at all, but to look at a position now and see this last, you're down to a certain number, but I think you ended up with like 70 applications. I mean, that is over 50% cut in the number of applications that we're seeing. And if you're not seeing as quality a candidate, cities didn't need to do it in the past. Those candidates came to them, and now that's not the case. So it's real important to do that.
our personal connections will really help
Yeah.
strengthen, that kind of.
Just a question, like how wide of a geographic net do we cast when we try to, look at recruiting, right? I mean, I know there's gonna be like some professional publications or, forums that you guys use, but how wide does that net go?
I think it's something that we can be adaptive with and reconsider, but preliminarily my thought is that we start metro wide with more of the in-person efforts, where maybe we would go to job fairs or we'd go to individual institutions to speak with the students and kind of forge those relationships with the instructors. But then again, I think it's going to be important to adapt if we're not reaching the success that we're looking for in those efforts, maybe we have to cast a wider net. I also think that it's important, and I want to throw some optimism in putting together the job posting or the brochure that highlights the city and also the police department, because I think that's something that we can use. Perhaps we send that to Greater Minnesota to some of the institutions, or when we do have a job opening, if that's something that gets linked from the city website on the job postings, I think could help. Because like what Matt alluded to is, I think the key is going to be if we can spell out what the community has to offer, if there's a way that we can state the demographics in the city, if we can show that an officer can make a difference in the community, I think it's important to showcase what we have and what the reality is of the city, because I think that's so important sometimes, which I think I failed to mention, is a highly desired candidate is in the position now where they can be selective where they want to work, as where, when I first started venturing into this profession, I mean, there were very few people hiring and the competition was so tight between candidates that now these successful candidates can essentially pick where they want to work. So I think combining those two strategies together, remaining adaptive, I think would be our best strategy.
One thing I was thinking about too is, I think about the local chamber offices, and I think about the pull now, not in regards to manufacturing careers and vocational trades and wanting to boost those and build those up again. So I'm also leveraging maybe the chamber offices in the area to kind of really emphasize, the need for recruitment in regards to law enforcement. I had a separate question. It just came to my mind. But what is the percentage of, CSOs that turn into sworn officers, and what is the percentage of people that run through our Police Explorer program turning into sworn officers?
I could venture a guess. I think it would be tough for me to give a percentage, but just off the top of my head, I mean, we have a number of staff currently that have come through. I mean, I would categorize it maybe as a handful that we've hired either from the CSO program or from the Police Explorers. Speaking on a larger basis, kind of metro-wide and some of my other experiences, it's quite common. I suffice a guess, not necessarily here, but probably at some agencies, you'd be looking at upwards of 50%.
Yeah, I was going to say our experience in the past has been about 50% of the people who go into CSO position are doing it because they want it to be an entry into law enforcement. And the other 50% really view it as a career. That's a way that a public service career that they can be in. And I think right now, Tracy probably knows better than anybody. I'd say probably 5 of our officers maybe were CSOs and of those, I think at least a couple were explorers. So we have had that success coming up through even our program.
Have we ever surveyed our explorers to find out maybe why or why not they wanted to pursue a law enforcement career after exiting that program? I mean, just curious about that.
I don't know.
I'm sure that there's been some exploration and dialogue. I mean, don't quote me on that. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that exploration in the profession is something that is discussed. This is something that I've also considered, whether it's for the CSO intern program or maybe some other type of job opportunity or explorer post, if, exploring some kind of a Q&A session. So Councilmember Hubbard, what you mentioned, with the chamber, I mean, there might be some collaborative ventures that we could look at where if there was a public Q&A, if people had questions about what this program is, I'm not saying that would be the panacea, but I think it might be worth taking a look at that partnership to see if we could draw in more non-traditional candidates and kind of foster that interest.
I was just going to comment. Good conversation. I appreciate. I'm always part of me as, I don't know if you know this, I'm a human resources. That's my profession. So recruiting, and to your point, you can do all the best you can do to find the best candidate, hire the best candidate, but you have to control the pool. I'm always a fan of what can we do different? Let's not just rely on what we've done in the past. And I appreciate kind of this knowledge and see some things to work at. I think the short term, obviously, we have, some openings and those will work itself out. I do like the long-term approach, the conversation about the junior explorers and the CSOs. I think, to me, in my terminology, those are feeder organizations. Those are feeder groups, right? We just discussed like how many people we hired from it, right? So I think a lot of attention does have to go into how do we recruit to even get people into that? And what is our diversity and inclusion pieces for that matter? Because in the end, if we're saying, well, we're hiring the best candidate and this is what we have to select from, that might look one way, but it might be an issue down in those feeder groups because we're not getting the people right in, right? Because, I think there is an advantage of a CSO hire, right? We've seen them in action. I love interviews, right? Best job predictor of job success is seeing them do the job. Interviews sometimes can be hit and miss, right? So I think some of that is a huge advantage. So I do appreciate seeing that kind of conversation about how that can build out a long-term strategy for recruitment. But I think we just got to also remember, like, how are we attracting people into those organizations? Because, that's some of the easiest pools to pull from. So I commend you for kind of, thinking outside the box a little bit. And it is interesting to hear about the number of candidates is narrowing, and obviously current events isn't helping a lot of things either with recruiting.
It's an interesting phenomenon too, because in a lot of professions, it's hard to find employees. I mean, it's been different during the pandemic, but the general trend for employment has been that there's a lot of, or there's a lot more jobs than there are people. And it's been sort of the opposite trend with law enforcement. And certainly the past year has not helped that. But we're losing people who are showing an interest in it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else? Just the only comment I would have is that, if you have a good department, good people will come and continue to come. It's, recruiting is recruiting. I look at it's hard for us to really go out and recruit and not handpick somebody either. You got to be careful that you don't do that. I think the success of what we've done in the past, that we've hired some CSOs, we've hired some explorers, shows that, if you come here and you want to be an explorer or CSO, you work hard, you can get hired. There is that potential, is always there. So I think that, I think we continue. I think it's good that we're looking at other ways to recruit, but I just know in this market it's challenging. But if you got a good department, good people will come, because you might be looking for change or want to get out of big departments now just because of all the craziness that's happening. And people want to get out in the suburbs now. But ultimately, I still think, our number one goal is that we got to get the best candidate that's in that pool. And no matter what color they are, who they are, it doesn't matter, is that we look at who that best candidate is, and that's who we give that job offer to. And obviously, I agree, whoever said it here earlier, that, the CSOs are explorers. We've already seen them. And if that's where they're going to get their people skills, and they're going to get, some are going to learn the hard way, because some of the things they deal with are people aren't happy. And that's where we really get to see them and shine. And that's where, so we are recruiting, just in a different way than what we're thinking of. We've been recruiting since we started that program, because that is a recruitment program. So I think we keep going the way we're going, look at new ideas and whatever. And ultimately, like I said, we've been fortunate. I think our last hire so far has been really good. And hopefully that just continues as we move forward. So thanks for stepping up.
I just want to add, Mayor, excuse me. I 100% agree with your comment about you got to hire the best candidate. I think our goal should be to make that pool the best representation, because then that means you're picking that best qualified candidate out of the best representation pool. And that's sometimes, like I said, in my profession, I always hear, like, hiring supervisor, I'll say, like, well, we're always going to pick the best candidate, right? Yep, understood. There's no equal thing where you can say two equal, like, a candidates, and one's, a minority and one's not. That doesn't exist. No, there is no duplicate candidate. But it really is about increasing that candidate pool to be representative of what you're looking for. And then it becomes easy. Then you pick the best candidate and that's the decision you make. So I again, applaud all those efforts to broadening that pool as much as possible to be attractive. Yep, you nailed it right away. If we're a good city and a good department, that's an attractive, incentive for people to come to.
And I would concur that it's really about being real specific about the skill sets that are going to be most important to your community. And, that's to me, if we get the skill sets right and it's reflective of what we think is most important for us to meet our objectives for serving that, we are going to get the best pool. And you're right. I mean, I would much rather have, I don't want it to be an easy decision at the end. I sort of want it to be a tough decision, but that the people who are, being considered are ones that really reflect the skill sets that we really want to be able to promote within the community.
All right, anything else for the chief? All right, well, thanks,
you.
appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, next I have Zach, and I still don't know how to pronounce your last name, so you're gonna have to. You got a son playing on the basketball team?
What's that?
You got a son on the basketball team, high school?
I don't. I have 3 daughters that go to elementary school.
Because there's similar to that, I was watching the Hawks and.
No. I appreciate that. No. I just wanted to make a quick couple of comments, maybe a question for the chief real quick too, but we talked about, and Matt, you mentioned about the skills and the language skills, maybe possibly a second language. Is that something that people can be trained on? If we hire somebody that wants to learn that skill, but maybe don't have that second language skill, they can be trained on in the job here while they're actually employed by the city?
You can be, but I think one of the things that becomes really important, especially when you're trying to connect with the community, that's very fluent at it. And you can train that, but it's very different than train it than to just know it.
Sure.
So I don't know if the chief has a different feeling than that, but that's actually one of the discussions.
That theater program.
Yeah, that's one of the discussions we've really had is how do you make sure that the people you're bringing in are able to really connect with your community.
Can I comment on that? Oh, sorry, Chief, if you wanted to first. I have a degree in another language, so I have a sign language interpreting degree, so but because I have a degree in that, and because I learned it that way, I was immersed in deaf culture. And so some would say that my interpreting when I did it was a lot better because I had that connection to the deaf culture. And I think that's probably true with, I don't think it's a bad thing to come on and learn it, but when you learn it in an immersive way, through like schooling, things like that, you're usually learning it from people that's their native language. You just get more immersed in the culture than just Rosetta Stone. Not that Rosetta Stone's a bad thing, but you know what I mean? I think it's still good to like learn another language, but I think that when you have it, I think that's maybe what you're getting. Yeah, you get that culture, which is
culture component of language. Yeah.
But I do think it's not bad to not just learn it too.
I was just curious. I heard you mention that, so just a thought. So, good evening, council members. I appreciate being here tonight. My name is Zach Saueressing, Mayor. Saueressing. It's very German, big German mess of letters. I'm a Chaska resident. I'm also a member of our Chaska Park Board here, and I'm here tonight representing a local public education advocacy group called Team 112. We're a group of parents, teachers, and community members who live and work in the areas that comprise Eastern Carver County School District. We're not a political group because education obviously should not be political, and we are not sponsored by District 112. We are residents who believe healthy public schools lead to healthy communities and vice versa. Our mission is to improve communication and connection between ECCS district administrators, teachers, parents, and communities to ensure that all stakeholders are informed and connected in order to best support and advocate for our school district. In short, we love our schools and our teachers, and we want to help them get all the tools and resources they need to be successful in their work with all of our kids. Even though Chaska City Council doesn't have any direct control over school district policy or budgets, we feel it's important that you know who we are for two reasons. One, you're going to be seeing a lot more of us here in the community moving forward, so it's important you know who we are and what we do. And two, whether you are elected or appointed in your position, and whether you like it or not, per the work session earlier, you all have indirect impact on many things. In social media terms, you are what is known as influencers. There's no greater example of this, in my opinion, than that this city council was the only municipal council in ECCS to pass a resolution of support in favor of the 2019 referendum, and Chaska was the only precinct that passed all three questions. So Carver, Victoria, and Chanhassen all heard the same presentation from District 112 personnel, and you were the only body that actually passed a resolution in support of it. And again, we were the only precinct that supported all three questions in the 2019 referendum. Why am I so passionate about schools? My family moved here 7 years ago. At the time, we had a 3-year-old daughter, a 1.5-year-old daughter, and another daughter on the way. We spent the first couple of years living here in Chaska, falling in love with the community, and we then began to get immersed in the school district through what we used to call preschool, but what we now call ECFE, which is Early Childhood Family Education. This was when the ECFE program, the Family Learning Center, was actually at Chaska High School at the time. After spending a couple years in the ECFE programs and getting to learn and understand a lot about how our teachers and how our school district operates here in Eastern Carver County, my oldest daughter started kindergarten, and she went into La Academia Spanish Immersion School. And we talked about getting immersed in culture and language at the same time. I firmly believe in that path for sure. But my oldest daughter started going to La Academia when La Academia was actually housed at the kindergarten center, which was originally constructed to be a half-day kindergarten building and not a full K-5 elementary school, which is what La Academia is. Fast forward to now, and I've had 3 daughters currently attending La Academia. And, you know, with all the things that happen in public education these days, I remember when we were kids growing up and, you know, you went to school and the worst thing you were concerned about was maybe getting lice or there was a tornado. And now the types of things that we ask our educators these days are, it's a pretty heavy task. It's a pretty heavy burden that they carry. In addition to trying to teach our children the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s, they've got everything from, you know, bullying to worry about, cyber predators, school shootings, and now we recently added on pandemic into sort of the things that we're asking of our public educators. Right now, currently, especially these last few weeks when it was so cold, I know it was nice this last weekend, but it was pretty inspiring to see all the great teachers that I get to see every day and work with at La Academia for all 3 of my daughters. They were all out there. The principal, two of the gym teachers, one of the art teachers, they're out there every day when we're dropping students off. And the chaotic conga line that is drop off and pick up in front of this elementary school these days, saying hi to the kids and trying to usher cars through. Again, during a pandemic, everybody wearing masks, everybody out there just trying to ensure kids get to school safely. And then they got to practice all the social distancing and everything going on throughout the day, in addition, again, to the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3s. But long story short, we really care about our teachers. We think they do a great job here in Eastern Carver County. Our advocacy group that we've started, Team 112, we're very serious about trying to help them in their process and their mission to help educate all the students that come to school here in Eastern Carver County. We know what's going on with the growth. We see the development here in Chaska especially. This doesn't happen by accident. We've got a great school district, but they definitely need our help and our support, not only with funding, but just with the emotional support showing up each and every day. So moving forward, in addition to being more active throughout our communities over the next year, Team 112 will be hosting community connection events, virtual for now, to help bring awareness to the great things happening in our district, how our district works, and how to better connect members of our community. Our first event actually is tomorrow night. We have 40 guests attending a talk with Dee Caring from Eastern Carver County School District. She runs the finance and operations. She's helping us to demystify school finance for a lot of our members. In closing, I'd like to encourage you and other members of our community to consider learning more about the great work being done in Eastern Carver County Schools. I know a lot of you are very well aware of it and already support, but also to learn more about how much more can be done in supporting them in their mission. I'd like to ask that people please check out our website, www.team112.org, to learn more about us or to find out how to get involved with our group. I appreciate being here tonight. And if anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them for you.
Questions for Zach?
Aside from how to pronounce my last name.
I would hope that, I will just say the last referendum, I wasn't real thrilled how it was handled. One, I don't think they involved the cities, and hence why they had only one city give them a letter of support. And like, we've talked about this, and when I first became mayor, those came forward, and it's like, well, we got to be careful about doing that. But in the same sense as, and I've given this speech before, and these folks here have already heard it, but strong schools mean good cities mean strong schools. And I just don't think there was a connection there.
Yeah.
And I felt that the question was asked a number of times, where are you at in the referendum? It's like a month or two away, and we're not hearing from anybody.
Yep.
And so, and now this one's starting to confuse me a little bit. It's now coming out saying that additions are cheaper than a new school. The last one was cheaper a new school than additions. We want to centralize our busing so we're not driving all over. Now we're going to build a bus. We're looking at a bus facility in the township area. So it's kind of confusing for somebody that's really following it close. If you're not following close, it's not going to make a difference. But if you are following this and seeing this, I just, that referendum is 8 months away, and there's nothing concrete. I can't say, yeah, that
sort of part of the process. And so that's going to be sort of our discussion, is to say, how do we make sure that each of the communities really feel like it's part of the process, so that it makes it hopefully easy for the school district to come back to you as city councils in each of the 4 communities and say, hey, this is something that's really, we're really hearing a clear message from each of our communities that this is the direction we want to go. Can you publicly go out and support it? Because I agree with you, it makes a big difference for a city council to support a
Absolutely.
referendum.
And I would never come up here and ask for, everyone can say I'm all for public schools being great and everybody loves great communities. And I believe everyone believes that in their heart of hearts. But at the end of the day, what you're tasked with is making prudent decisions based on all the facts. And I guarantee you, we're not going to rest until you've heard all the facts. We know that the district can't do this on their own. They have a lot going on right now. They just got shifted again by the governor in trying to deal with this pandemic. My children started off the year 4 days in person, 1 day distance learning. Before we got to Thanksgiving, they got shifted back to all distance learning. That has thrown everything, my house, into chaos, and a lot of other houses into chaos. In the middle of all this, we've got a superintendent and assistant superintendent who show up every day. They listen to everybody. We've got a lot of teachers who are being pushed on the brink. The 2019 referendum not passing not only was meant, $5.2 million in cuts, but we cut almost 3 to 4 dozen teachers out of this district. My children's building alone over here at La Academia, it used to be Chaska Elementary, lost 6 teachers. My daughter's 4th grade class has 30 students. I never once had anything over 20 students in a class growing up as a kid. And they're getting pushed. They still show up every day. They're doing a great job. They take my questions as a parent, asking very specific things about my daughters. My children's school was built in 1970, and it certainly looks like it. These are assets that our communities have invested in over decades. That building's older than I am, and it needs a little bit of repair. The bond part of the referendum that got defeated in 2019, the biggest part of it by far was for deferred maintenance. And the biggest laundry list or punch list of the deferred maintenance on that was for La Academia over here. Right now, I think these are all valid concerns being brought up. I think these are great questions being asked, but I guarantee you're going to get all the facts to have the opportunity to make an educated decision on whether or not you should support it. And then we as community members, there's a lot of us out there right now. And this is just I'm sort of the tip of the spear at this point, that we are going to ask you to support, and we're going to try to help you get as much information as you want or need. I'm here to help. I'm not going to put this all on the school district. I'm here to help as well.
So, speaking as a parent with kids in the district, as a parent with kids in the district, one of the things that I have to say is that the teachers and the staff have been fantastic. They've been really stepping up in spite of both the situation due to the pandemic and the double whammy of the cuts that they've had to endure because of the failed referendum. Yeah. One of the things I think that the district, and this is all of us kind of on the sideline, so to speak, needs to do and step up is realize look back at their own history. You mentioned the 2015 referendum, which passed overwhelmingly. But 2 years before that, there was the 2013 referendum, which failed spectacularly for the same, challenges. And one of the things that happened was that between those two, the district said, let's reach out to the parents, let's reach out to the community and build that, groundswell support at the grassroots level. And there's a tremendous movement, much like is happening now. But they had to go through a failure once to realize, oh wait, this requires community buy-in, community involvement. And for that message to get through, that, hey, there's a real need, these are the things that we need to fund, and to have a really clear message. The one thing that, I think also shared the mayor's concern, which is that the one thing that's not coming through is what's the clear message. I think the last election cycle, the message was diluted, and it wasn't crisp. By the time it gets to council or any constituent here, it should be a really easy ask. We're trying to pay for buildings that need fixing. We're trying to pay for buses that don't run. We're trying to pay for teachers in the classroom to reduce class sizes. It should be really simple things. But that got completely lost through the noise of other things going on.
Absolutely.
And by the time it gets to us, it should be a really easy vote.
Agreed.
And the problem is it wasn't an easy vote which is demonstrated by the other cities around us who didn't vote that way, because that message was not clear at all. And I mean, my wife works in the district, and because of that, it's, I feel it kind of directly, and from that perspective that, there's real pain out there within the teaching ranks. There's real challenges that every teacher, every administrator is trying to face on a day-to-day basis. And they're doing things far above and beyond for the well-being of our children.
Absolutely.
Things that they shouldn't normally be asked to do. But they're stepping up because they believe in our kids. They want our kids to have a quality education. But we need to step up too and support that. But on the same token, they need, the leadership of the district needs to step up and help make that something easy for us to give back.
The conversations that I've had with district leadership has been those very things, and school board members as well. Just individual conversations I've had with people is that they're gearing up to have a very clear message when it's time to do an ask. And there isn't an official referendum on the docket for this year. They're talking about the needs right now. To me, it's just my personal opinion. I don't have some inside track, but I feel like there's going to be a referendum this year. But I can't say that with any certainty because that's not my decision to make. That's the school board's decision to make. But I do know that Lisa Sales Adams, Aaron Rathke, and the school board are all going to be there and be ready to give a clear message. And we're going to do our best to help them with that. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question and a comment. I will agree with both the mayor and Councilmember Wong on the confusion, but I also think they kind of pulled it together. I think no group controlled the narrative. So I think that's an obstacle that's going to be needed to overcome whatever comes out on the table. But good communication from the get-go obviously helps.
Yes.
My one question, is Team 112 like an official yes campaign, or are you guys completely separate from that entity?
We are not a yes campaign. We're not a political group. We started in the wake of the 2019 referendum just because, to me, I saw there was a great need to help the district get out a clearer message to everyone's point about the work that they are doing. There was a lot of, in my opinion, misinformation that was out there in the community about what's actually going on in the classrooms. And so that's where it all started. Now, when a referendum comes up, are we going to support it? Absolutely, because we think that's in the best interest of helping the schools. But we are not an official yes campaign, no. Thanks for asking that, though. Everybody, as soon as people hear my name or see Team 112 now, they're like, oh, we're not talking to the yes campaign. I'm like, we're not a yes campaign. But we'll support one for sure.
I'll just say, I mean, we're giving feedback because this is recorded and people can hear it, and the school board will hear it, and school officials will hear it. But specifically for you, I'll just say thank you, because I think what your organization goal is and what is needed on both sides of every issue is another voice to be heard, to be listened to. And right, wrong, or indifferent, there's distrust. And people want to hear from other parents and other community members, not the school board, not necessarily the administrators. I have no reason personally not to listen to them and trust them, but there's that issue. So I think your voice is important because I will say that if anything we learned from 2019 is a bunch of passionate individuals who have a lot of voices can make a lot of noise. Now, what that noise is up to those groups. But I just want, like I said, I want to thank you. I know you're here to kind of just represent the group, and we've kind of talked about a clear message here.
Yeah, no,
but it's
agree.
important because, people look for trusted resources, and another parent and another group is a trusted resources where maybe I don't know who that school board member is, and yeah, they're on the school board, so they're going to tell me this, but I can go to and hear another message from a parent group, which is appreciative because people look for that. So thank you for your committee and your group and your organization.
Appreciate you saying that. We literally started, we were just a bunch of parents that were realizing that we've got to help out the school district during this referendum campaign. And we all just sort of banded together after that. And we had big plans last year to go out and canvass the community, but we got sidetracked because of COVID. But here we are again. Yes.
On your website, and it's real cute. I like the logo. Just a quick question about the connection series. These are some really exciting topics, and I know you say your space is limited, but you're gonna be, it sounds like they'll be posted after. Is that somewhere we can look if we wanted to listen in?
Eventually they'll be on our website. So what we're doing tomorrow is our first event. And so we're going to be recording this event with Dee Dee Caring. And then once we edit down because it'll be an hour-long event, then we'll post sort of the highlights of it online. And
Oh,
we're going to continue to post videos and other information online, all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah,
the website's a fluid thing for us. We're going to
yeah,
continue to build it as we
yeah,
go.
websites are like that. Yeah, because I think these are really, really exciting topics. I think it'd be really nice for, you know, even though space is limited, for people to be able to, I mean, demystifying all things District 112 finance. That's something, you know,
Yeah.
a definite message that should be pushed, and like the new equity inclusion director, like these are exciting topics. So that's awesome that they'll be kind of highlighted here.
This was all intended to be in person. This was not intended to be an online thing. When we started Team 112, this was meant to be, let's get back in the community, let's get offline. Let's stop this stuff back and forth online. Again, back to the work session from earlier for city. You know, let's get offline and get back into the community. But because of COVID, we had to start doing everything virtually. But these were intended to be town hall meetings where we could have actual, one of the things that we did in researching how campaigns were worked in communities with referendums, but just the communities that were dealing with the same thing we're dealing with. A lot of it had to do with leadership, being out in the community, being really hands-on, direct, and front and center with everybody. And we think that the new superintendent we have, Lisa Sales Adams, this is part of the reason why I think she wanted the job, because she knew that she could get out here, be in the community, and help us build back the support that we need and that we deserve. Thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, everybody. Thank you
for coming in. All right, last, I see Jessica still with us. So Jessica, she is with United Community Awareness. Welcome back, Jessica.
Hi, thank you. Hopefully my volume's rolling. So good evening, council members and mayor. Thank you for a few minutes on the agenda tonight. As said, I'm Jessica Bartholomew, and I am the executive director of ACT United, which is a nonprofit organization in Chaska. And for those who don't know who we are and what we do, in short, we work to end the sexual exploitation and trafficking of children and teens. And we do that in a strong model of prevention, because we believe that we are not going to end something by waiting for harm to occur, waiting for its effects and responding to it. But really, we need to get ahead of it in prevention and go upstream with what we know. So tonight, I want to update our city leaders and our community members on what we see happening with youth, and invite everyone to learn more about the issues and what we can all do together to ensure the health and safety of the youth in our families and in our community. One of the biggest concerns that we are addressing with youth right now are the dangers of explicit photo and video sharing. Youth are being pressured, coerced, or willingly making and sending explicit photos of themselves and sharing those with both their in-person and online relationships. What youth often do not anticipate, however, with this decision is how their photo or their video, now in the hands of somebody else, is then used to control, exploit, or threaten them into sending more sexually explicit photos and videos. We see this happening in every school, both middle school and high school, as well as college campuses in other communities and churches. And it's happening here in Chaska and every community throughout Minnesota. And although Chaska has individuals and populations that are at increased risk of sexual exploitation crimes, because sexual exploitation and sex trafficking often start online, that is the point of first contact for the majority of these crimes at this point. That means any child or teen with a cell phone and without good prevention education is also an at-risk population. So last year, the Minnesota Department of Health, they released the results of the 2019 Minnesota High School Student Survey. And what that survey found of our high school students is that 5,000 students reported being a victim of at least one form of sex trafficking within that year. These students were from every region in Minnesota. There was no community that was exempt. And there was no statistical significance between the rates of sexually exploited boys or girls. So we see all genders, ethnicities, and communities impacted by these exploitation crimes against youth or people that are under the age of 18. And what this survey also confirms for everyone, which is something that we've always known at ACT United with my background in particular with this, is that these kids, when it comes to sexual exploitation as well as sex trafficking, are not missing. They're not gone. Less than 10% of sex trafficking cases of juveniles happen or begin with a kidnapping. The majority are relationships. And so these kids are not missing. These kids are still in school. They're still in church. They are still a part of the community. They still go home, although there might be periods of time on a weekend or a holiday or after school, or they may be missing or considered a runaway for a couple of days. They are still in school, and we're able to take the survey. So we've known that this is not a kidnapping issue. These are kids that are right here in our communities, which leads me well, to another thing that I want to talk about first is that's why we have prevention education programs in our schools and in our churches, because that's the population and those are the students that we're able to reach in both prevention so that harm doesn't have to happen, as well as intervention. Because when students are in school and experiencing these crimes and the harmful effects of these crimes, and unfortunately, this is a very secretive crime. It is not reported often or proactively reported. So when we come in and do programs, we often find ourselves moving into a intervention role and helping students really navigate their way out of this and make connections and get the resources that they need to get back on a path of health and healing and justice. So with our programs, we have a teen prevention program, and we also have online safety for youth. But the success of prevention really does three things. It educates our families so that our grandparents and our parents and all our community members know what's happening, how to see it, what are their resources and tools for prevention. And it equips our professionals. And it also, and importantly, empowers our youth. Because our youth are the ones that are targeted, it is critical and imperative if we are going to ensure their health and their safety and work in prevention, that youth have the information, the resources, as well as help with their confidence and developing life skills and their leadership. And that leads me to the other thing that we are seeing with youth, both in Chaska and in our work throughout Minnesota, and that is that youth are also wanting to participate and engage in our leadership programs at increasing rates. Kids are really also rising up to be a part of the solution for their generation. They are the voice, they are the game changers, and the ones that are going to shift this culture of sexual exploitation happening on their phones. When they are confident and making good decisions for themselves, we multiply our prevention impact because they're the example then in their peer group. So that's what our programs do. We call it learner to leader, so that we're not only giving information and preventative information to students to keep themselves safe, but we are also providing a pathway for their leadership through our leadership development program and our mentoring programs. So prevention starts with education and awareness. So my ask of council and mayor and community members is that you would join us for our 7th annual Community Awareness to Action Conference that is this week. It is a webinar series, February 24th through the 27th. It is 3 individual 1-hour webinars with their own topic and their own expert speaker. So I invite you to be a part of that and to register to get more awareness and more information. So together, we don't have to wait for harm to happen. We don't have to wait for crime to happen, but we can get ahead of it in prevention by all being a champion for prevention education in our schools to make sure every youth has this program. So I thank you for your time, and I do talk really quick, and certainly would love any questions.
Jessica, what time is that? What time are those webinars?
Registration and all class information is on our website, which is actunited.org. And if you go to our events page, we have Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. And we have Carter staff with the Human Trafficking Task Force from Eden Prairie Police Department for that session, talking about what are the trends, what is happening in Minnesota. And then on Thursday evening, it's 6:30 p.m. and we are going to be talking with a representative of the House, Peggy Bennett from Southern Minnesota, on what is happening in with bills and in our politics with bills that are working to protect children or maybe putting children at risk. And then on Saturday morning at 10 a.m., we're going to hear from elected county attorney for Pine County, Reese Fredrickson, who was the prosecutor in the famed Victor Bernard child sex cult case here in Minnesota in 2017. And he'll be talking about how faith communities can have, can be particularly vulnerable to pedophile and cult personalities that can groom individuals as well as whole congregations for sexual abuse. And so it really addresses some of those systemic systems of sexual abuse and what we can all do to keep our faith communities and our whole community safe.
Thank you. Anyone else have a question for Jessica?
Not a question. Hi, Jessica. It's so nice to see you.
Same.
Thank you so much for, your continued, just having this topic every year, having this series every year. I know usually you guys meet in person and you bring speakers in. So it's really nice to see that you're doing this virtually this year and you're continuing with it. It's very important.
Yeah, well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And we're going to keep plugging away, even with our youth programs in schools. When you get with kids and they share, you build the trust and they share with you, and you're able to walk even just one teenager out of a horrible online situation, it's worth it all. So we're still doing our programs virtually as well as in person, depending on the school district or the church. Thank you.
Well, thanks, and Sam, thanks for all your efforts. And it's kind of one of those things that you don't really know about it unless you're more and more educated about it. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, thank you again. Mike, is there anyone else for visitor presentation? No? Okay. All right, we will move on to item number 6 then, approving previous meeting minutes. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I would entertain a motion to approve previous meeting minutes.
So moved.
A motion by Councilmember Grah, second by Councilmember Hubbard to approve the February 1st council meeting minutes, excuse me. Discussion.
Just one thing, it's pretty minor. In the meeting minutes, when we were meeting with Senator Coleman, I had asked her about the PPP loans and whether they would be forgiven, and it's in the minutes as like PVP or something. So I don't know if that's yeah, I don't know, just as reflection back, if that's a typo that needs to be corrected, just to make sure people understand what that was. But
change it. You want to put a note to Vicky?
Otherwise, yeah, it's pretty simple.
Well, we're approving that with that correction, so. All right, any other? All right, hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Hearing none, passes 5-0. All right, moves us to item number 7, consent. Again, these are items that need our approval, but not necessarily a conversation, but anything can be pulled off and had a conversation regarding. So with that, is there anyone that has anything? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve consent.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Hatfield to approve consent. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Moves us to action item number 8A, union contracts.
Mayor and council members, the item in front of you tonight is in relation, well, I'll take a step back. On the consent agenda, you saw that we had the non-union and part-time employees for our annual wage considerations. We try to do non-union and union employees in the same evening because we really try to make sure that there's consistency across the board. Between what's happening with our non-union and union employees. We have approximately half of our employees fall within sort of union contracts, and about half of our employees don't. So it's no mistake that they're on the same agenda together. We tried to put those on together. But 2021 was the year that each of our contracts was up. And we have 4 unions. We have our Teamsters Local 320, which really represents all of our MSB building, Public Works, and all of our utilities there. We have our Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 385, which is our sergeants. We have our Law Enforcement Labor Services Local 210, which is our patrol officers and investigators, and then LALS Local 447, which is representing our lieutenants. And you'll see there's a number of objectives that we have when we're looking at the contracts each year, which is really pretty consistent with what we look at when we look at non-union employees too, as far as how we address wages. Probably the biggest thing that you'll see as a difference in this year's contract from past years is typically we like to have 2-year contracts. And the reason for that is, first of all, it's a lot of work to renegotiate a contract. You know, you're getting together, especially with multiple unions, you know, quite often if you're doing it on an annual basis, and you like to create some certainty. It's hard to do it beyond 2 years because it's really hard to predict where's that market going to be 2 years from now. But you like to have some type of certainty going into the future, both for the employees who are part of the union, but also from a budgeting perspective too, because we tend to look at our budgets in multiple year segments and not just one. So this year is different, and the reason being is really because of COVID. The really big issue that we saw as we looked out at different contracts in the specifically in the metro area is not all contracts are on this. A lot of places have 2-year contracts, but not all contracts are in the same cycle. So some contracts may not be up until 2022. And so they would have gone through the process of actually doing their rate adjustments and negotiating those prior to COVID happening for a time period as we're going through the pandemic. And so you're seeing sort of a discrepancy between those that are negotiating contracts now and those that already had contracts that were in place before the pandemic happened. And one of the things that to really understand what's happening with the market, we need to really be able to look at what's happening with those contracts for those who are negotiating for 2022 to really see, are they holding back on those contracts as they're looking in the future because they may have been above the market during this pandemic period, or is the market, you know, it's really hard to determine what the market is when you're seeing us in the middle of this pandemic and also that these contract periods are not meshing up. And so we occasionally have found ourselves in that position. The last time we did a 1-year contract and sort of ran into a similar issue was back in, it was during the recession in probably the 2009, 2010 time period. And I thought that time actually worked pretty well for us to look at a 1-year contract because the world just became more clear as far as, you know, what was the market that was sort of developing after that occurred. So you will see that this is a recommendation for a 1-year contract. And just like with the non-union employees, the wage increase that we're recommending in the all of the union contracts, and which is consistent with our budget that we set as a 1.5% increase. One thing to mention with the non-union employees, we do have a pay for performance plan with them that if you perform higher than the average, you have the potential of getting more. We actually suspended that this year so that everybody across the board is getting 1.5%. We felt that it was really important if we were going to have these types of changes this year, that everybody was really in the same boat. So it's really a 1.5% increase across the board. And you know, the other big component of the contract is our employer contribution to benefits. And you'll see that we're recommending a 0% increase in that. One of the things that really helped us in that this year is that we are actually seeing a pretty significant decrease in our premium costs for this year. That's not too atypical from a lot of employers. Are actually seeing decreases because, believe it or not, during the pandemic, there was actually less use of medical services than there was pre-pandemic.
Oh.
You couldn't go, you couldn't get elective surgeries. There's all these different reasons that sort of drove the medical insurance industry actually saw less claims last year than they have in most years. And so even though we have a 0% increase, you know, the employees are seeing some benefit because those premium costs do go down. And we're part of a cafeteria plan, so we basically contribute dollars to employees, and then they're able to go out and decide what medical package do they want, you know, can decide with life insurance and dental and all those different types of things. So we get involved with what the contribution amount is, and then we have an employee benefit committee that actually chooses the benefits that they'll actually offer to employees. So those are the two aspects of the contract. And again, those are consistent with what you saw in the non-union contracts. Some of the differences in the contracts, you know, first of all, in our contracts, all of our contracts involve employees that have uniforms, and so there is a uniform allowance that's in the contract. We are recommending that increase by 3% in all 4 of the contracts. Cell phones, we're actually moving to a system where we don't have people have their own private cell phones, that we actually go to actually having city issued cell phones. And it sort of gets back to some of the discussions that we had during our training at the beginning here, is that we think it's, even though there was a trend about a decade ago to sort of go to private cell phones and then give a stipend to help them cover that cost, there's just way too many data practice issues that run up with people having personal and private on one. So we're actually suggesting that we separate that and actually move to a city issued phone. So that's part of the contract here. For law enforcement, labor services, we are recommending a 0.5% increase, so 1% annually to the healthcare savings plans. And then some specific language as it relates to callback language. We're really trying to get to how do we create a negative incentive for us as an employer to not call back people once they've already been been in a shift, and then try to call them back within 12 hours. It's not a good, healthy thing to do. So we want to try to create a disincentive in the contract to do that. We talk about reprimand language. That was one thing that wasn't real clear in the last contract, where it said that you could get things removed if the police chief requested it. You could never have disciplinary actions removed. They were counseling statements, and we made a clear distinction between that a counseling statement doesn't belong in a employee personnel file. It's your review. It's the things that you're supposed to work on as an employee. And if there's a disciplinary action, that disciplinary action needs to stay in that file. So that makes it clear in the contract how that's occurred. And then just internal investigation language to make sure that there's a clear expectation between the city and the union, especially the business agents, that there's not going to be delays in, if we need to go through an investigation process, that both sides are working to expedite that process. Let's see. We had to add for the Teamsters contract, the uniform allowance is the same. On-call pay, so we're suggesting that we increase the pay for employees scheduled for 7 consecutive days of on-call duty. Right now, they get 16 additional hours. We're recommending they go up to 17 and a half hours, given the amount of time that they actually have to dedicate towards the on-call duty. Incentive pay, it's basically just increasing at the same amount as the general wage. If you remember, we did add building maintenance personnel in our last, not this budget cycle, but the last budget cycle. We need to call out that new position in the contract, so it's actually adding the building maintenance personnel in the contract.
They're not separate. They'd be with the 320.
Yeah. Yep. Temporary groundmen, we have an existing memo in place that allows us to have a temporary position. It's really to provide some additional help up at the electric department until some of the long-term absences are taken care of. So there was discussion about potentially taking the ability to have that temporary groundman position out. And then if we wanted to move in that direction, that it become a permanent position. We're not in a position budget-wise to do that, so we agreed to continue to have that temporary position. Sure. And then the electric incentive program is actually something that the council had previously passed since the last contract. We had it's basically an incentive program to help get educational credits. We had it as a memo attached that was approved by the council, and now it just incorporates that language into the contract itself. So with that being said, staff is recommending the adoption of each of these union contracts and to authorize me as a city administrator to execute into those. Just with like the union or non-union employees, everything would go retroactive back to January 1st. So it'd be January 1st and then moving forward. And then obviously, since this is a one-year contract, we'll be back talking about this in about 6 months again. So any questions?
Questions for Matt?
Just one super quick question. So with the cell phones, because I know I used to work for a company that had like, corporate cell phones. So we weren't really allowed to, we could make like a personal call, but how is that handled if someone wants to, like use that for personal stuff? I mean, would they be allowed to, or is it pretty much completely no? If you want to make any calls,
it's sort of the pain in the butt factor, but it's also sort of the how do you protect yourself sort of factor. It used to be that everybody carried around 2 cell phones. So that's sort of what we're going back to.
So basically, it's like city stuff stays in this one. Personal stuff you can have your own if you want it. Yep. Okay.
All right, anything else?
Just had a question in regards to Article 7 under the grievance process. Is it just like language change? Because it's maybe I know there's a few different contracts, so maybe it says it on a different one, but it says peace officer like on in like the past, but now it says supervisor. Is that different for each? Is that different for each contract, or
that's in actually the supervisor's contract. So they had language that they took originally from the patrol officer's contract and just forgot to change it over to supervisor. So so that's specifically with the sergeant contract.
I wondered if it was just because everything else seemed like it was the same between the two. And just a comment note that we've talked about the union contract with the police and everything like that, and to see that removal at 6.1 or whatever it was in regards to the personnel file. So I did notice that was not on there anymore as well. So I think that kind of clears things up in regards to just transparency with the community.
To me, it was always a difference between what the practice was and what it said in the contract. And really what this is doing is matching the practice up, because personnel files are meant for official actions.
Just had two quick minor questions. Uniform allowance talks about payable January 1st. So if it's retroactive, if it got an upward, because it's going back to January, but did they get that uniform allowance? And then if it goes up, we just change the difference there?
Yeah, so basically, they're responsible for having their clothes in good condition. And so, so if they incurred the expense before that, they did it out of pocket and then they get reimbursed for it. So it is tough when it's not on January 1st, but typically they're not purchasing things until the contract comes around.
Yep. And then just like, this is more of a personal curiosity question. It says it's paid first January 1st. The uniform allowance, once paid, is considered compensation, shall not be returned. Considered compensation, is that taxable?
Yes.
Okay.
It's actually, it wasn't an issue in the last 2-year contract, but it was two years ago. It was actually an issue with a number of benefits that we had that we had to go through an audit process with our MNKR to determine which of the benefits that maybe we weren't taxing in the past needed to be taxed, and that was one of them. And so that was language that they recommended.
Thank you.
Good. Right, thanks, Matt. Whoops, glasses fell off. With that, is there someone that wants to make a motion to approve the 2021 contracts?
So I'll move to approve the 2021 union contracts. I mean, there's not a thing there, but yeah, that's looking at how to phrase it. So yeah, I'll move to approve the employment of the employment contracts for 2021 between Chaska and Teamsters Local 320, Lulls Local 210, Lulls Local 447, Lulls Local 385, effective January 1st, 2021.
Okay, so I have a motion by Councilmember Wong,
Second.
second by Councilmember Matt for union contracts. Discussion. I think they're pretty straightforward to what we've done in the past.
Yeah, I just want to make a special comment to all the employees. This has obviously been a really difficult year, and this probably isn't what people hope and expect for when they look at annual raises, but this is a difficult time, and I just want to really thank them for just everything they've done over the last year, and then just understanding what a challenging year this was. So these aren't the discussions you like to have, but I thought everybody had a good discussion, and I think it helps that we're only looking at this over 1 year and saying, how do we get into that next 2022 year?
And I was just kind of going to go there, that they're willing to accept a 1.5 is I'm sure some bending and some not things that they wanted to do, but I too appreciate that fact that they're willing to realize the state of the world right now and to accept that. And a 1 year, I think, is a wise move at this point. That just it gets us as a city through it, and then that we can see where it's at next year and go from there. This Thursday we actually have our annual employee recognition awards. It will be completely different, virtually done, but they will still have the breakfast. It'll just be a grab and go. So that's still happening. So I just think that's always a good event. It's fairly quick and recognize people, little breakfast and little time off to hopefully get to know their other people working here and stuff like that. So, but again, different this year. All right, we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. All right, we move on to 8B, which is adopt resolution 2021-7, resolution calling for a public hearing on establishment of a TIF district number 24, Chaska Creek Industrial.
Here, Councilman, I'm going to turn this one over to Nate.
All right, Mayor and council members, the item in front of you is a resolution calling for a public hearing. to establish TIF district number 24, which it would be TIF district number 24 over in the Chaska Creek industrial area. And so this is a project that on January 25th was in front of you all for the preliminary plan. This is the Arboretum industrial project in the Chaska Creek Business Park. The project proposes to develop 2 industrial buildings. The first building that the developer, which is Arboretum, plans to build, or at least the way they're looking at it currently, is on Outlot E, which is the more southerly lot. It's a 168,000 square foot industrial building. The second building would be on Outlot A, which is about 133,000 square feet industrial building. So those buildings would create pretty significant tax base in the community. They're also the first industrial users to locate in that Chaska Business Park, which has been targeted for that use for some time. In addition to that, as the 2 leading buildings in that area, they would be drawing up some significant infrastructure extensions to that area, including sewer extension up Creek Road, water connections, the connection of Chaska Creek Boulevard to Creek Road with the roundabout that's planned there, urbanization of Creek Road for areas that are serving that proposed development. In addition to that, the sewer extension in particular would eventually serve the entire industrial expansion area that's targeted for the west side of of Trunk Highway 212 as it runs north-south in that area. So the area that's really ends up being fed by the new interchange off of County Road 44 is also served by this sewer extension. And so, as is consistent with city and EDA policy, the industrial development is eligible for TIF assistance. The industrial project would qualify for an 8-year economic development TIF district. City and EDA policies state that the project is eligible to receive an amount equal to 2 times the TIF eligible property taxes generated by the completed project. So basically, we're taking the property taxes that the project would pay, multiplying that by 2 to come up with the eligibility, and that's the calculation that's been used for quite some time. When I say TIF eligible, what we're looking at are the various taxing districts that get captured by a TIF. So school district, county, city, there's a few special tax districts that are a part of that as well. But what's not included in that would be like school district referendum levies. There's a state levy that's applied to industrial and commercial properties that the city doesn't capture through a TIF. There's also the local contribution that the city is that's a regional piece that the city contributes to that gets redistributed among regional cities. That's something that's not captured through TIF, and so we're not including that in our calculation. So really it's about, what are we capturing in TIF? How do we contribute that to the project? So in total, across those 2 buildings, what would be contributed to the project is approximately $700,000. So that's the round number. It would be something a little bit different as we go through the analysis and come to the agreement. I think the opportunity in this for the city, in addition to landing a pretty good industrial user or users in that area, is also the opportunity to generate additional excess TIF through that district. So it would generate approximately $2 million is the estimate right now of excess increment. That would be dollars that would be eligible to be used on things like the sewer extension and the other infrastructure extensions that are necessary for this project. And then ultimately also prepare some other pretty large areas for to be served as they develop. And so there's mutual interest in this. So the first step in the process really is to call for this public hearing for April 2nd, or I'm sorry, April 5th of this year to be held. That would be what the city council would need to take up in order to recommend the TIF district to be established or consider that happening. The EDA ultimately establishes the district, so that would be something that would happen on that April 5th night as well. What you saw in your packet attached to this, to the staff report, is a letter of intent. So that is something that we've reached with Opidin, laying out some of the basic terms of what would ultimately be the TIF agreement. That's something that the EDA would take up tonight as well. So that accompanies basically this action. So with that, I'd open up to any questions, but staff's recommendation would be to pass the resolution in front of you in order to establish that public hearing to occur on April 5th.
We have to establish that public hearing, or is that just, it's in the action item, so it's already there?
It's resolution, so council would make a motion to pass this resolution, which would establish the public hearing. Yep. And we do have Jay Moore in the audience. He's representing Opidin.
Right, questions for anyone? All right, I don't think this is anything out of the ordinary that we've done in the past. I thought it was 7 years, but it's 8 years, right?
8 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right, if there are no questions, I guess we're gonna go through this exact same thing in, we have an EDA, short EDA meeting right after. And we'll just be discussing the same.
And basically the reason for that, city councils give the EDAs authority to set up a TIF district, but it's actually the EDA who actually establishes a TIF district and would provide any assistance. Some cities, the EDA is a different body of people than the city council. It's a little odd when you have the same people up here.
All right, again, I'd be looking for a motion to adopt resolution 2021-7. And that's for calling for a public hearing to establish a TIF District 24.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Hubbard, I didn't hear. And second by Councilmember Wong to adopt resolution 2021-7. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye, pose same sign. Motion carries.
The one thing I will mention real quick is they're going to be in for final in March in front of the council for their final approval there. So
Moving right along.
That's about as fast as I see him.
moving along.
Well, thanks for coming in. I don't know if you're going to stay for the EDA.
He was on the Zoom call and then decided to come down.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were.
Are right next door.
Too far away, so.
Maybe he walked here from the beginning of the meeting.
Jay was logged on Zoom, and then he asked me
That's what I mean, and then.
I said, sure, if you want,
Like,
but
logged in, started walking.
that's just dedication,
I got
so.
here.
I don't know if you want to come up and say anything, but you don't have to. But you'd have to come up here if you did. Just state your name and.
Jay Moore with Opidin. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council. As you stated, I was watching and kind of following along the way here, but thanks for taking time on this topic. It's an exciting project, and we're excited to invest in the city of Chaska, but we do need a little help and assistance along the way, so we appreciate the consideration.
Awesome.
And we've been working with staff for several months on all the behind the scenes issues and making good progress, so thank you.
I see the signage.
Community.
Yeah.
Great. So you are looking at building then this year, if you're moving that fast, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Always good to see action happening, so.
Out some, but those are always challenges, but
Oh, anytime you put a shovel in the ground, there's a challenge.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a comment. I saw the signage go up because I travel that route and it was kind of fun to see that go up so quickly. So I noticed it when it went up. So
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Thanks for coming in.
Jay.
All right, moves us to bills. Anyone?
I've got a couple of questions. Let's see. So, page 4, there's an item for Baker Tilly. What was said continuing disclosure, and it was for like 6,200.
Yeah, so we have to complete continuing disclosure forms for our bonding that we do that basically discloses things to our bond holders.
Oh, okay. So this is like an ongoing kind of thing for like, okay.
Per bonds.
And then the other question I have is on page 24, there's one under power system engineering. And it's like, so there's this substation procedure book. And it's like 15 grand for this book. So I was making an educated guess, but I figure I'd just ask just to make sure that it's like something to meet regulatory standards or something that you kind of have to have in order to do this, right?
Yeah, so basically, once you actually complete work, it's sort of like an as-built for a road. Is once you build it, you have to go back and complete the plans of how it was actually built. So if somebody goes back in the future and has to do maintenance, they know exactly what happened and not just what was planned.
So this is for like audit then?
No, it's for operations. Yeah, so it's to make sure that in the future that we can properly maintain our substations, and everyone is different. And so it's making sure that the nuances of the differences of those is all captured in a manual.
So it's making sure that what's actually there actually is documented correctly. So it's not just because like you build something, then it's not, you build it differently than the way you design it.
Yeah,
and so they just match, right?
Yeah, at the end, you want to make sure that somebody 20 years from now is able to maintain it the same as somebody that is now.
It makes sense. And the last was just a comment. On page 32, there was this, I noticed that Vitals is back on, and I know that was part of the budget from last year that we approved back in December. So it's good to see that the police department's like back on that again, which is a good asset. So, yep. So that's all I've got.
Okay, anyone else? Motion to pay the bills.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Wong.
Second, by Councilmember McGraw.
Councilmember McGraw to pay the bills. Discussion. Nate, we call roll.
Yes, Councilmember Hatfield,
Yes.
Councilmember Hubbard,
Yes.
Councilmember Wong, Councilmember Grau,
Yes.
Winchell.
Yes. All right, passes 5-0, moves us to other business. Councilmember McGraw.
I really don't have much other than I did want to just do a shout out to the Chaska girls basketball team, because I'm a news junkie and a sports junkie, and sometimes things catch my eye. And I'm currently looking at ESPN.com. And so ESPN tends to try to rank high school sports, which is kind of a hard thing to do because they don't really play each other, right? But there are two schools in the top, or there's one school in the top 25, which is actually the number one, which is Hopkins. I won't say that too loud. But under the also considered Chaska, Minnesota girls basketball is also receiving consideration. So I thought that's pretty cool. I haven't obviously been to a game, but I've kind of watched them on Twitter. I've noticed some of the scores are like insanely different point spread, and kind of like, wow, that's interesting. Now I understand why. You don't know if it's the caliber of who they're playing or the caliber of the team, and clearly they're getting some actually national attention, which is pretty cool. So just wanted to give a shout out to the Chaska High School girls basketball team, because even though they're not in the top 25, it's still pretty cool to be in the also considered list. And
number 2 or 3 in the state right now for their class. They have one girl that is in McDonald's regional, their list of all-stars they put together, and they have a junior that's already committed to the U of M. So they are a very good team.
Have all the top 25, and then if you do the also consider, there are only 2 Minnesota schools that are listed, and that's number one, which we won't say again, and then Chaska, which is the one we want to brag about. So just wanted to throw that out because that actually caught my attention on a Twitter feed that I saw. So I wanted to pull it up and make a shout out for the team. And that is all I have.
Councilmember Hatfield.
I don't have anything.
Nothing?
No, I know it's weird. I racked my brain. Couldn't think of things.
Save it for next week.
Yeah.
We're back next week. Councilmember Wong.
A few things, so I'll make it quick. So the food distribution event on February 18th, certainly thank you to everyone who was able to attend that and to volunteer for that. So it was like a really solid turnout there. I was out of town, unfortunately. Upcoming events. So in addition to the food distribution event on March 11th, which is still on schedule, that'll be at Gedney. There's also a Fair for All, which is February 25th, at the Crown of Glory. And Fair for All is basically like a discounted food. So it's like $25 and kind of a big box of stuff, or, you know, I think there's some different packages, but that's through Crown of Glory Church in Chaska on February 25th. And it was also, I also saw the news about Guardian Angels closing. That's a really sad one because it's that's been a staple of our community for such a long time, probably over 100 years or something. And I know there's probably a lot of people out there who are, alumni of GA. So I know it's very sad to see that close, and I know it was a difficult decision for everyone. Well, I also saw the notice on the benefits package for the city that the city is using Nice Healthcare, which is pretty cool. I know the company I work for actually uses it, and just hearing from what I hear from my colleagues, everyone who's used it has just raved about how awesome the service is. I mean, people, when they have sick kids,
or see you at home, and you get the prescriptions delivered right to your door.
Yeah.
And the insurance company loves it because it's cheaper, but it's a better service for the employees. So it's a cool service.
It's really cool. It's better service. It's cheaper for the employees. It's cheaper for the insurance companies. It's kind of, a lot of people are just like, wow, this is the way all healthcare should be like this. I mean, it's just really super positive. And whether it's taking care of the little kids or for themselves, it's everyone. All of my coworkers have been saying this is absolutely fantastic. So that is all I've got.
Councilmember Hubbard.
Just quick. I did attend the food distribution drive this last Thursday, and I was very grateful that they postponed it a week because it made a really big difference in regards to the temperatures. Everybody was really happy. I did a little bit of a different role this year. Instead of throwing food in the car, I actually went and filled out the information. I found that job to be really interesting just to see, like, in the community where people were coming from, zip code wise and things along those sorts. So, but when you, Matt, had noted in your biweekly that 20,000 people had been served, I was like wondering how many of boxes of those, food packages I've actually physically put into trunks, but I couldn't be happier. And Matt, or Councilmember Wong, you had mentioned about the next one. So also just this month being Black History Month, some of us, I don't know if anybody else had gotten the invitation to sign up for the 21-day racial equity challenge that was hosted by another city. So one of our neighboring cities, that wrapped up. I haven't been able to look at every single day, just with our email servers going down, but I did dive into kind of some of the main points, and it was a really great community or involvement event over the course of the month. There was a lot of different topics. I liked how it was all laid out. I'd love to see Chaska do something like that in some sort of form and aspect.
We don't want to model ourselves after St. Louis Park, though. So
no, it was a lot of great information. It was almost overwhelming for each day, but I thought, if you could take a kind of a snippet of something similar.
It's actually interesting. The city of St. Louis Park for years has really created a pretty robust training program that they allow other cities to participate in. They do a really nice job.
Yeah, no, it was really well done. I like the way that they broke down each day. I like that they have different media, ways of consuming, information, whether it be video or something to read or something to interact with. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then also kind of along the same lines, I got invited to listen to Brian Stevenson. For those that maybe aren't aware of the name, he was the lawyer who was, his memoir was made into a movie, Just Mercy. So he, helps try to overturn death penalty convictions, really working with racial equity. And he talked about racial justice and the path forward. And it was just an incredible speech on his behalf, just kind of talking and highlighting some of the narratives that I think that as a city official, just as community members, we could all follow to kind of build on that momentum towards racial justice in our own community and then, you know, outward. So, and then lastly, I just want to mention the passing of Barb Kohlhoff. Barb was a really special woman, and I think she was not only special to me, but just to all of the city of Chaska. You know, I had the honor and privilege of serving with Barb on the Human Rights Commission for a number of years. And in fact, she served like 3 terms, which is, you know, 9 years, and then she couldn't serve. She took a year off, and it was kind of sad because, you know, I just loved seeing Barb and everything. And she, you know, would participate. She just wasn't a part of it. And then she came back on to serve again after that year, which I thought was just awesome to be able to continue serving even after you've served the 3 terms in a row. I had an opportunity to attend a virtual service. I don't know if anybody else did, but I thought it was really well done. It was a nice introspective of her life, just with the slideshow of all the images, just to kind of see how close she was with her family and her community. And I just felt like it was just a wonderful presentation. But I just want to let everybody know that she'll just be really missed. So
I would echo that. I missed the opening part of the service. I kind of forgot about it, and then I started watching, and I thought it was very nicely done, and I was trying to comment, but I wasn't able to on the services. She's that resident that every city wished they had. I mean, she's very pleasant. She's always big smile on her face when you greet her. She always wanted to greet you. Just well-spoken and just well-respected. I mean, when Barb went into the room, everybody went to her. And that just is a real tribute to what kind of person she was. So yeah, you're absolutely right. She will be, she certainly will be missed by the community as a whole. So it was a great service that they had for her, so.
and that is all that I have.
Okay. All right, over there, Luke, anything?
You talking to me? No. She was very special to Chaska, Barb, and I have nothing to say.
Nate?
Got nothing.
I just wanted to mention about the federal stimulus package going through. So we have had an opportunity to reach out to all of our congressional delegation. I've actually heard back this morning. I talked with Karen from Senator Klobuchar's office. We've talked with Zach from Congressman Phillips' office, and it's really appearing, talking to them, that this has a very strong chance of being approved. That was the one part. It was actually one of the difficult parts of the last stimulus package, was the local aid component of it. This time it seems to have a lot of support. And you know, I put in the biweekly, it's a significant deal for us as a city. I mean, the community center, and you know, this facility to a certain extent, but this is smaller, but especially the community center had such a huge impact financially from being shut down, you know, over the course of the year twice, you know, losing 50% of our memberships. And so being able to now have this assistance to be able to help to recoup some of those lost revenues is going to be a really big deal for us. So it does look like we'll be at about $5 million based on the numbers that are out there now. Chanhassen similar. Carver County is, I think they said $21 million. So there's just a lot of assistance that will really help sort of recoup what was lost during the pandemic. But a huge thank you to our congressional delegation. I mean, they just hopped right on this and were very helpful in the process. They expect March, they said March 14th, but I think they meant the 15th is when it looks like they're gonna target for consideration of a final bill. U.S. Treasury has 60 days to get the checks cut to the states, and then the states have 30 days to make that distribution to the cities. So we expect somewhere in that June timeframe that we'd get that, assuming everything passes through. So some good news to help us as we're coming out of this pandemic.
And the other part of that, those letters being sent is for the state not to put some ungodly restrictions on it and delay getting it out to the cities. Our hope is that they turn around and move it through quickly. So we're working with not only our, our national delegates, but we're working with our locals to make sure that we get that. And
yep, and I did hear back from both Representative Bowe and Senator Coleman saying that they appreciate us getting that over. I do know that Congressman Phillips' office indicated that looks like there might be language included in there saying that there can't be a reduction in amounts given that are allocated to communities by states or additional restrictions put on. So I think they're trying to put some of that language in actual federal legislation too.
that'll be great.
Yeah.
That'll be great. All right, anything else? All right. I really didn't have a much. I just want to touch on a few things. We are back here again next Monday, March 1st. We'll have a work session with Southwest Transit. And then we'll have, it says we're going to have a short council meeting. So generally when we're back to back like this, chances are we'll be hopefully in and out rather quickly. So we will be back here next Monday night at 7 o'clock, and we will be at the event center. I want to touch about one thing that happened within our community that two of our employees were able to do to help our senior population is Julie Janke, police officer, and Joan Seedorf from the community center were able to secure roughly 120 vaccinations for some of our, not necessarily, just our senior population that don't necessarily have access to computers or rides. They were able to set up busing from Southwest Transit. So Southwest Transit came to their buildings, took them to the vaccination site. So I think those are some of these things that are happening behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realize that are happening. And that's really a big thing that we're able to, that they, not we, that they were able to secure those through Ridgeview to get these folks in and get vaccinated. Because they otherwise, that's part of that population that sometimes gets missed, and they're some of the most vulnerable that need it, and sooner than later. So I just want to say thank you to Joan and Julie. And Matt, you want to say something?
Yeah, what I was going to say is Nate and Tim Weeby and myself had a meeting with Daryl Ratty today from Ridgeview, and Ridgeview's commitment is to continue to set aside a certain percentage of their vaccines. If we're able to secure through public health, being able to get reimbursement for those. And so we're going to be meeting with public health to do that. But the concept would be to use what we did last Friday as a model to use in like Riverview Terrace, Brandondale, other communities within Chaska that have difficulty with access to technology and access to rides. And Southwest Transit has indicated that they'll continue to do their service with that as well. And we're going to have to go in sort of stages because like right now it's focused on the 65 and older. And then we'll have to come back into these communities in the future when we get into general population, because there's going to be certain neighborhoods that, there's going to be people under 65 too that are going to fall in that same category. So we're going to come up with sort of a system of how to get into some of these more hard to reach and serve parts of the community. So this was a fantastic model and a way to kick it off. And what we'd like to do is to show that it not only could be done here in Chaska, but something that could be done in other Carver County communities as well.
That's pretty cool. The other thing I wanted to touch on, these are out of our bi-weekly from Matt, is the update on the train issue that we had out on the very road. I've seen they made great strides because every time you cross over 41 now, the train, the siding is to the east and everything to the west is empty at this point. So I am very impressed that Twin Cities and Western actually listened to our concerns and have made great improvements. And Wagner, right, is the president. So I just want to put a shout out to him. And we looked into the cost of a quiet crossing, and the quiet crossing never has really been an issue until the siding stuff was going on. And we did look at past practices, and the other place that we have that was assessed out to the residents. So that would be something that would be done the same way. It would be, you know, part of the burden of the neighborhoods if they want that quiet crossing. So we'll see more to come. And maybe just by moving all of that siding to the east, that has helped eliminate those issues. And I don't know if anybody from council's gotten any calls one way or another, but I have not. So that's a good thing. So
the residents were pretty happy with Twin City Western. I mean, they made a point of saying that. You know, the thing we talked about is, you know, someday that section of Pioneer Trail is going to be expanded to 4 lanes. And when that happens, when you do those types of projects at that point, there's no incremental increase in cost. And so doing a silent crossing at that point would be really no cost to any resident. And so we really did spend quite a bit of time talking about, you know, there's a cost to doing it immediately compared to just looking at long-term, where do we want to get to? And so, you know, so I thought we had a good conversation about that too. And we sort of left it with the neighborhood groups to talk about, is this something they're interested in expediting? That we could go through that process, or does it make more sense to look at, you know, when improvements are done on that road that you'd actually put that silent crossing in at that point? Because at some point it would not be difficult to put in if you had to expand that to 4 lanes.
right. Last thing, you know, we're starting to have some conversations about summer events. Most of our summer events are pushed to fall. So Fire and Ice is tentatively still planned for October 15th, which would coincide with the Chaska Fire Department's 150th anniversary of existence. So that should be a fun time. If anybody was around when fire department had 125th celebration, that was quite the fun time that was had. And why was it 125th? Because they missed the 100-year celebration. So we settled for 125, and we had to do something.
5 years to figure it out.
But our historian Dick Shallow, he felt bad. He somehow missed that. He didn't know. But
I still think the 150th city celebration fireworks up at the fire station were still the best fireworks ever.
Oh, there's no doubt. We were right on top of them. I mean, they were right over your head.
Yeah.
The duds landed in the beer drinking tent almost. So it was. We probably could never pull that event off like we did 25 years ago. I think we'd probably all go to jail, but it was certainly a great time, without a doubt. And so I don't know. So those things are coming. I think the Taste of Chaska, that's normally in May. I think I saw a tentative date of August. Christmas in May, that's normally the first part of May, is tentatively set for September now. So you just really need to keep an eye on those websites if there's something you're interested in, and then hopefully Chaska Communications will keep pushing things out. So, all right, that's all I have. I didn't really have anything else other than what was on the thing. Last call. If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a short EDA, basically talk about that TIF district. So it should be
one real quick thing. Something happened, you know, we've had a few weeks since our last meeting, something happened in the Star Tribune over the last few weeks that.
Yeah.
Did see that.
Somebody was a
Yeah.
celebrity.
I was gonna ask for his autograph when we
He
were
was
done.
a celebrity.
Congratulations, Luke.
Yes, congrats.
Thank you.
So you'll have to let us know when you're done with us. I don't consider you done yet. So
They've hired a person to take my place, and she's a female, if that's okay with you guys. I'm sure it's with you ladies. She's a Harvard graduate, so apparently she's got the intelligence there. She speaks well. I met with her once for about an hour and a half telling her about Chaska, and she just started full-time this week, I think.
so she'll kind of get going and then eventually just kind of take over your slot then?
Yes, absolutely. I hope so.
Please let us, please let us know at least a few days before the last meeting and not at the meeting.
Oh, yeah, right, I will.
He's just gonna sneak out.
Yeah.
This is-
So we have a little bit idea, so. All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion by Councilmember Wong. Why do I say that? Wong. Second by Councilmember Hubbard. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned. And Mike, we can kick right in? All right. We will turn around and I had it here. I'll call the EDA meeting to order at 9:14. Nate, we call roll.
Commissioner Hatfield,
Here.
Commissioner Hubbard,
Here.
Commissioner Wong, Commissioner Graw,
Here.
President Winchell.
Next, we move to item 3, adopting the agenda. If there are no corrections or additions to the agenda, I entertain a motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion by Commissioner Hatfield,
Second.
second by Commissioner Graw to approve adopt the agenda. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Next, we move to approve previous meeting minutes from the December 21st, 2020 EDA meeting. Again, if there are no corrections or additions, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Hubbard,
Second.
second by Commissioner Hatfield to approve. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Approve, same, disapprove. Man, brain's not working now. Is there anybody opposed? How's that? Passes 5-0. Moves us to item 5A, authorize a letter of intent for TIF assistance to proposed Auburn industrial project.
Sure. I was just about to say, President and Commissioners, remove my mask. This is basically the same item that was presented at the council meeting relating to the proposed Auburn industrial project up in the Chaska Creek Business Park. Whereas the council meeting, the action was to pass a resolution to establish a public hearing to establish the TIF district. This is a motion to authorize the EDA director to execute the letter of intent for TIF assistance to the proposed Auburn industrial project. So the letter was presented at the council meeting as a supporting document. But to summarize that, what we're doing is to establish an 8-year economic development TIF district. The project would be eligible to receive an amount equal to 2 times the TIF eligible property taxes, which is approximately $700,000 as it applies to this project. So the letter of intent really outlines the details of what would ultimately be a TIF and development agreement, which would be brought back to you all sometime, well, on April 5th, when the public hearing is held to establish a TIF district. So that's what's before you tonight, is really entering into that letter of intent, which sets the terms of what would be the agreement. If there's any questions or comments, I'll open it up for that.
Questions for Nate? Like I said, this is pretty much really a spinoff of the last with, so we're authorizing a letter of intent for TIF assistance to the Oppenheimer industrial project. All right, I'm not hearing any discussion. Is there someone that would like to make a motion to authorize that letter?
So moved.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Hatfield, second by Commissioner Hubbard, to authorize a letter of intent for TIF district assistance. Discussion. Hearing none. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, passes 5-0. I'll just throw it out. Other business, anyone? Don't bring up Kentucky Fried Chicken. I'm not gonna listen to a discussion on Kentucky Fried
No,
Chicken.
that's like the new hotspot, right? Remember that was always the topic, like what?
I somewhere that they should build there, but it's a secret.
Well, now it's on the record.
I don't know.
Taco Bell.
What did she mumble down there?
She said something about she has secrets.
I told Taco Bell they should build there.
Taco Bell.
Sure, absolutely.
Tell Trader Joe's on a monthly basis to come to Chaska. So if you guys are wondering, I also email Trader Joe's monthly to tell them to come to Chaska.
If you're from southern Minnesota, it has to be Taco John's.
Taco John's, yeah.
I emailed Taco Bell.
Churros.
I didn't email them, I submitted them.
I'll reference a letter to the editor that Commissioner Long wrote. I still remember that you had written about people always talking about, the dance of what comes to a city and what doesn't come to a city. And I think you specifically talked about Trader Joe's, right? So
If I had a nickel for every time someone mentioned Trader Joe's.
You can really fill out a form on their website. So if they ask you again, just tell them they can just go to their website.
I know.
If they do it monthly, I mean, there's probably going to be enough people bugging them.
That is only if they actually read the emails.
I think if you go
right?
to their website now, it just pre-fills it with Chaska as one of the drop downs. Are you from Chaska?
All right, anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn so we can come back here next Monday. I don't know who said it. I hear it over there.
I didn't say
I
anything.
did.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Long and I have a second by Commissioner Hatfield. Discussion.
No, it's not. I'm Hubbard.
Oh, I thought she seconded.
No.
Oh. Okay, so it's seconded by Commissioner Hubbard. There is no discussion. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Have a great night. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nothing good happens after